meeting, Kim Poor of Villarica requests conditional use for property located at 326 North Avenue for the purpose of keeping goats and chickens. Since the last meeting, I've received another correspondence from a neighbor, and I'm going to pass that to y'all. Ms. Britt had previously voiced her opposition to this project, but she's offering a compromise and that she would accept the rental of goats and not a full-time residence of the goats to her neighbor, Ms. Poor. And Ms. Britt could not be here tonight, so she sent that letter instead. Planning Commission did hear this and recommended denial. Staff had recommended approval of this, and the applicant is present. And you will be required to have a public hearing for this.
Yes, we do have public hearing. Does anyone in the audience would like to come forward and speak for or against this ordinance?
Jody Mount, 214 Rockmart Road, and I'm speaking in support of this. Kudzu is a nuisance, and I'm surprised nobody's filed a nuisance lawsuit against some of these property owners with kudzu that creeps over on other property owners. Goats or sheep are a proven way to help take care of that without chemicals and things. If someone has goats or chickens for that matter, and they become a nuisance, we have nuisance ordinances on the books to deal with that. You know, if they're drawing flies, if they're drawing vermin, if the smell is bad, if the noise is bad, they're all ordinances, nuisance ordinances to cover that. Other communities are doing this. We have it where we do allow goats for the control of the kudzu. So I say, let her do them, and if it's a nuisance, then deal with it under the nuisance ordinance. Kind of like the drones. There's already law out there. So let's just enforce what we have. Let's not restrict more people and their property rights. Let's work with the laws that we have on the books already. Thank you.
I'm Prissy Sullivan at 207 North Avenue, just up the street from Ms. Poor. We have had goats. They unless you have a herd of goats, they're not going to bother anybody. They're not loud. They're a little playful, but they stay in their yard. You can stake them out. They are the best thing for kudzu, and they are really a whole lot less of a nuisance than a dog that barks, and I have one of those, so I know. And they do destroy the kudzu, and I think any property that has a goat, it's a plus for them.
Hi everybody, I'm Kim Poor, the proposed goat lady, 326 North Avenue. I inundated y'all with lots of information last time, and I just wanted to give y'all the opportunity to ask me any questions that you feel might be important so that I could address them. I do know that one of our city council members came out and took a quick look, and I pointed out the two people that are not overly fond of the idea of goats. One of them, you could see about this much of their roof through the kudzu in the woods and everything. And the other one, you really couldn't see much of anything at all. So their concerns of noise and smell, I think, are perhaps a little bit, they're over-concerned. I'm not looking to be a goat farmer. I don't want to continue to keep goats. The main plan behind what I researched is that after an approximate number of years, in this case 10, because the growth, the kudzu is old growth. It's been there for years and years and years, and it's going to be awfully hard to kill. After about 10 years, usually the kudzu is killed back, and the need for goats can, it's gone. And therefore the goats are gone, because I don't want to be a goat farmer. Also, one of the other reasons that I would prefer to go with goats versus mechanical means, lawnmowers, trying to pull this stuff out by hand, is the expense. It cost me approximately $1,400 the first year I was on the property to beat the kudzu back just a little bit. And the other way to get rid of kudzu is through chemicals. And I try not to put more chemicals into the water table. The approximate 3 acres of kudzu that I do own would take hundreds of gallons of chemicals to eradicate that. So I'm going for the least expensive, most beneficial avenue to clear the kudzu within the city limits. Any questions? Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to come forward? If not, wait. Janet.
My name is Rusty Dean. I live at 402 North Avenue, Little Rica, Georgia, 30180. I live 2 houses down from Kim. My property in the back almost, if not absolutely, touches her property. And I'm in favor of this if she'll let me borrow a goat so that I can get the kudzu that's creeping over my way before it gets to my house.
Is that a bribe?
Yes.
All right, we revert back to the council. Is there any discussion from the council?
As I recall, Janet, wasn't it a split vote on planning and zoning?
It was a split vote. It was 2-1 for denial. There were only 3 members of the planning commission present that night.
Okay. I personally don't have a problem with it because of the acreage, but I think we ought to limit it to 1 year on the conditional use. So we'll have control of it. If it turns out to be a problem for the neighbors, bring it back around, take a look at it in about a year.
I looked through all the information, also read the letters from the neighbors, looked at the evidence, read the size of the goats and details. I learned a lot about goats. And chickens, we are already allowing chickens with conditional permits. And yeah, we're not going to have wild Mustangs and that sort of thing, but there's a way to have things that aren't bothering anyone else, and if it isn't infringing on anyone else, and based on the evidence and everything I've read, I don't see, in some ways, it's less bothering of neighbors than some other things we're allowed to have. I don't have a problem with it. If we revisited it in a year, there's a fee, and I know we've done this before, there's usually a fee.
Yeah, we can dictate the way
we can waive that fee.
If she comes back, yes.
I'm willing to, I don't really think it's necessary, but if that compromise is the way to get it passed, I'll go down that road. I don't really, conditional permit, how long does it usually last? She's asking for 10 years. What's our?
It lasts until y'all put a deadline on it or until the property owner changes.
Until we put a deadline on it.
You can either put a deadline, or if she moves, then the conditional use goes away.
Okay, I'll move to approve with the 1 year limitation on it and waive the fee if she has to come back.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second that we would permit the
Additional use, yeah.
use of the goats and the chickens. All in favor of Mr. Carter's motion? All opposed? So we've got a,
On a 2-2 tie, that does not pass the motion.
okay, so the motion be denied, right?
It does.
Or to be revisited?
It can be revisited on a tie vote. and be brought back up.
So
But it does not pass right now.
It could get revisited either while we're still four of us, and it can get revisited when we have a new person.
When we had Ward 4
On council.
representation. We
Correct.
sure could use some Ward 4 representation out there.
Yeah, could y'all get at it? We're tired of waiting.
Yeah, it can be, if you can choose to revisit it, or
I know.
when we have an addition to the council, it can be revisited so that there's not a tie vote.
I really think that a revisit may need to be done to planning and zoning. And normally I try not to go against those guys on what they ask for. Very few exceptions. But I think those are the folks, I would change my vote if they voted affirmative for it.
Well, I believe Mr. Mecklin, if they denied it, it would have to go back to planning and zoning before it
Yes.
comes back to y'all.
How many votes were we missing? There were a total of three votes?
3 votes at planning commission.
And there's normally, if everybody's there, there's
5.
5. So we were missing 2 people when it was voted on. So it'll go back automatically,
Well, not automatically, if she wants.
if she wants it. Okay.
superiority.
Or the council could vote to direct that it go back to the planning commission.
I would move that we direct it back to planning and zoning since we have a tie vote on the council.
Second.
All right, it's been properly moved and seconded that this vote, wait a minute, you know,
No.
okay, we got a motion and a second that this will go back to the planning and zoning. All in favor? Opposes? 4-0. All right.
The next item that I have for you all is the drone use ordinance, ORD-14-16-CCO. Based on the comments that I heard at the work session, I've given you all at your station a new drone ordinance that only governs the launching and operation of drones within and above property owned by the city of Villa Rica.
We got this tonight.
Yes.
So it's going to be, I for one cannot vote on something I just saw. I'm probably not the only one, but I do have a question. Is there anything in this that says whether that property is populated at the time with a special event or
No.
you're off in a corner of a field? Okay, right.
I know what the above is, but what was the within? What does that mean?
Like on the property or above it, on
On the property.
the property,
And that applies only to city property.
only city property.
Also, I think it's probably good to clarify with some of the people making public comments that there was never any desire to ban drones. There was a proposal to put some restrictions, and we've been knocking it back and forth, trying to figure out if that's acceptable or not. Janet? See,
But since we just got this tonight, you want to just table it to we can have time to read over it or study it or, what
I
you
think
counsel?
we have to, since we haven't read through the new one. There's just no way unless we read it while other people were doing things, and that's,
What's the
I don't,
pledge of the
I
council?
have no problem with tabling it because it's not critical. So I'll move to table it to the September meeting.
second it.
All right, it's been moved and second that we will table this discussion about the drones until our next meeting due to the fact that we've just received information this evening. All in favor? Opposes? No.
And if there's any way we can have I'm sure public comments are in there, some notation to the fact that we have people offering to give a free class to people to teach them, that's something that hopefully we'll keep a record of for people that are in the city that might have drones that would like to avail themselves of that training.
Madam Mayor, let me point out one thing also. The change, as I read it, in the new proposed unmanned aircraft ordinance simply is limiting it on city property or above city property. And so That could also probably be addressed as simply a city policy as opposed to an official ordinance. I mean, we have the right to control our own property without having an ordinance about it. I throw that out. You could have an ordinance, but I think you could achieve the same result without having an ordinance.
Well, that gives them a month to resolve it, and I think you're right. We don't want to do ordinances just for the fun of
Just be
doing
an
ordinances.
ordinance, yeah.
We just add to our pile of ordinances, we got to,
I mean, I'm for all less laws. We should have a lot less laws. If we can do it another way without actually having to have a law, I'm good with that. I feel
Me
sorry
too.
for the department that keeps having to rewrite this thing about 20 times for us.
I appreciate
All
city
right,
attorney's
so we'll
comment.
just go ahead and table it, and we'll discuss it at our.
Let them
next
work it out,
council.
yeah.
Okay.
Make it happen. All right, Ms. Hyde.
The next item that I have for you is a conditional use, CU-02-16. Greg Daniel of Villa Rica requests a conditional use permit for property located at 106 Hunter Industrial Boulevard. And then a larger parcel adjacent to that that does not have an address yet. He's doing this for the purpose of a wrecker service or vehicle equipment storage facility. Mr. Daniel is looking at purchasing this property to expand his wrecker service. Planning Commission recommended approval of this, and the applicant is here.
Wait,
Counter in the back.
okay, do you have anything to? Who is that?
Mr. Daniel?
Is the applicant here?
Yes.
Why don't we have him
Would you like
come on
to
up?
say something?
Hello, I'm Greg Daniel, 128 Maple Valley Drive, Villa Rica. I'm asking for a land use on this property so that I can grow my business. I'm just simply out of room where I'm at and just a couple doors down. I'd ask that you could approve that so we can grow.
All right. Okay, thank you. I think this calls for a public hearing, so is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak for or against this? Not, this reverts back to the council. What is the pleasure of the council? Do we have any discussion?
Ms. Hyde, does he already have a conditional use for the existing property he has now?
He does.
Okay.
And what did the planning and zoning?
Planning and zoning recommended approval.
So if there's no further discussion, what kind of?
What
I
about
make a
staff?
motion to approve.
I just
Sorry.
want to know, what did staff recommend?
Staff recommended approval.
Okay, I'll second it.
All right, it's been properly moved and seconded that we will issue the conditional use permit to Mr. Greg Daniel. All in favor of this, show of hands. Opposes? 4-0. Thank you. All right, number 4.
Next item that I have for you is an ordinance ORD-15-16-CCO. This is an ordinance for the purpose of amending Chapter 2, Streets and Sidewalks, by adding an additional section addressing truck parking. Based on the comments at the work session, I brought you a very simplified version of what you saw last Thursday that will only limit parking of tractor trailers, the tractor or the trailer or the combination thereof, up on any public street or the shoulder thereof, city-owned parking lot, or other public property. Limits it in a residential district as well as commercial except for loading and unloading. And again, we've had a lot of problems with tractor trailers parking in areas overnight where they're not supposed to park, such as the shoulders of the road in the industrial park, certain commercial property that's not designated as a truck stop.
And we do have ordinance that speaks against this, right?
We don't have an ordinance yet, but that's what this will
That's
do.
what we are working on now. Okay.
So this totally removes the towing truck part?
Yes.
We're just dealing with semi-trailers. Purposes of unloading and loading, if there's designated truck parking, that's not a problem, right?
Right.
Obviously, they can't stay overnight, but they can go to Waffle House and
Right.
stay for more than 20 minutes. Even if they're not unloading something. So,
Is there a limitation on the time for loading and unloading?
Doesn't appear to be.
I mean, it might take them a week to load and unload.
Take that long, they don't need to do it.
I had an hour in here, but I took that out. Well, I think the version that y'all got first said 20 minutes, and then I went with an hour. And based on some comments that I got, I felt like it was restrictive to even put an hour on there because
Yeah.
sometimes loading and unloading can even
Yeah,
take longer than an hour.
especially a semi.
I think there ought to be a limitation because they could slowly load, unload one and keep it there for a long time. All because we don't have any kind of time limitation on it.
But we do have something about them parking and staying overnight, right?
So it sounds like overnight is the time limit.
So this is mainly what we're dealing with, the overnight parking. This-
Say, let's go with the simplified version. If that doesn't fix it, then we'll come back and we'll do more. But this seems to address what our big problem was. Correct? I mean,
All right, if you could put that in a motion, Ms. Pierce.
I make a motion to amend section 22-100 truck parking.
To say what,
I'll second.
To,
to go with the,
yes, to
Recommendation.
add this section 22-100 regarding truck parking to the ordinance.
Yep,
okay.
second it.
She's changing. She wants you to hold on. You okay? All right. Okay, we've got a motion. Did you second that, Mr. Carter? And a second that we will accept this amendment or change to the ordinance for truck parking.
Addition, yeah.
Do I get a, all in favor, say aye. Or raise your hand.
Don't change it up on us.
All right, okay. All right, opposed is no. All right, we will accept this change in the ordinance for truck parking. All right, alcoholic beverage.
Madam Mayor, that ordinance, since the work session, we revised to get it into better format. You probably just received that late this afternoon. And so I would recommend that you hold off a month till you can all have time to study over it. The one part of it that was, seemed to have some time sensitivity to the council was just on the closing time for consumption on the premises. Currently, it terminates at 12 midnight on Saturday night. There was a recommendation to extend that to 1:30 a.m., which is the time for Monday through Friday nights. If that is of importance to the council to vote on that one issue, I think you could do that separately tonight because that's a very discrete issue. But as to reapproving the entire ordinance, you may want to spend some time reading it.
I don't see any reason why we should be in a hurry. So I would make a motion to table item B6 until the September meeting.
I'm good with tabling the entire ordinance because we do need to read it thoroughly. However, I've had constituents that have been waiting for months for us to deal with the hours on Saturday. I'd like to ask that we vote for that tonight.
But didn't you make a motion?
I did,
Okay.
and
Is his motion on the table, so do we get a second to that, or do?
we don't have a second, then we,
So the motion,
I'm saying, do we get a second?
Motion
or
was
do
to
you-
table the whole thing tonight.
Yeah.
Second. It hasn't been seconded yet.
All right, it's been moved and seconded by Mr. Carter, and seconded by Mr. Best, that we table the discussions on this since we've just gotten this evening. All in favor?
Yeah, I think so.
All opposed? 3-1. So we'll table this
the September meeting.
until our next meeting.
September.
Mr. City Manager? That would be me. Yes, what would you like? Mr. City Attorney, the council has tabled this. Would it be appropriate if a council member then made a subsequent motion?
Yeah, I think it would be, we tabled it was approved to table the whole ordinance. I think if Councilwoman McPherson wants to make a motion to approve that one point, that would be within your right to do so.
Yeah, and that's the only reason that I voted against tabling everything. That's the way I understood it, that we were tabling everything. I would like to make a motion that we approve just that one segment that deals with the pouring hours on Saturday night to match pouring hours of Monday through Friday.
Which would be changing it from 12 midnight to 1:30 a.m.
From 12 midnight to 1:30 a.m.
I've got no problem with that one. That sounds good. I'll second it.
The properly moved and seconded that we will table the motion, table the discussion on the alcohol, but then there's a motion that we will vote on.
Just
the
at pouring hours.
That one point
Yeah, we
on,
will vote on the hours that would have the pouring license. We've got a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your hand. Well, you know I don't vote for liquor license.
Are you voting against or not voting? Because that's very important.
Voting for
For
the change of hours.
of hours.
Correct. I'm just saying, Madam Mayor, and consult with your city attorney, but I believe there's a very distinct difference of, are you abstaining or you simply voting nay? And that's very important for a determination.
Oh, you talking about me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm voting no. I vote no on.
and how, Councilman Best, I didn't see you. Is it?
Not asked for the vote yet.
Okay.
Yeah. All in favor of Ms. McPherson's vote and the second by Mr. Carter, raise your hand. All opposed?
So it's a 2-2 vote. And in that situation, as we stated earlier, that does not pass.
All right. Okay. Moving right along. All right, our next item, number 7.
Okay, the last item that I have for you is a discussion item. To discuss the intersection of South Carroll Road at the rear entrance to Walmart and the front entrance to Wildwood Apartments. Staff has received continued complaints from the community about this intersection. As the constituent stated earlier, we did receive a petition from the community for improvements, including a 4-way stop at this intersection. Staff provided you all with the data from the speed study that was done last year. 60% of the drivers were driving at the rate of 46 to 55 miles per hour. Traffic engineer recommended a 4-point traffic study. We don't have equipment to do a 4-point traffic study. That's where you would put the tubes on every single street that would have the stop sign. And it would cost about $25,000 to get that traffic study done. And then I think the quote that's in your package, it was a design build quote, and the total was, let me get to it, $125,000 for the engineering and the repainting and the curbing and everything.
Didn't that include an additional turning lane? At least it was recommended by the engineer that did the previous study.
I believe it did.
I think that's what I read.
Ms. Hyde, would a turnabout, would that be cheaper or be more economical than a,
I'm not sure.
A roundabout would be
Man,
more expensive.
excuse me?
A
That's a
roundabout would be
small
more
area.
expensive.
Say what now?
It would be more expensive for a roundabout.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. I
You
was
have to
just-
take extra right away.
Okay,
away
that was
from-
just a question I didn't.
I think we have to do something there. This has been going on for years. You look back at some of the recommendations from, I don't know, as far back as 2004 and that sort of thing. Is there anybody, we can't get a 4-point study for less than that? I mean, does any other city have equipment we can rent from them? I mean, do we have, that may sound like a dumb question, but
Might be able to borrow it from Douglas County, but I'm
how
not
much do
sure.
they want to charge us again to do that 4-point study?
$25,000.
$25,000. Is there any other option to get that done other than that?
I mean, we certainly can reach out to other governments and inquire.
Are you volunteering
Well,
to
you could
pay for
simply
it?
go up
We
there.
have somebody in the audience
You can
volunteering
simply
to pay
go up
for
and
it.
put stop signs out and go on. It would be no problem whatsoever as a city, because it is a city street. We could simply go put the stop signs out and go on. Is
Now-
that correct?
No, that's not incorrect.
Okay.
Oh, the lawyers,
thought I
they
could
always
get
mess
that
everything up.
We do need to make sure that our road system is safe and in accordance with state standards.
And if they want to add an additional right turning lane there, that gets more involved too.
And the 25,000 is not budgeted.
Yeah. I don't know what everybody else thinks. I feel like, for me, I can only speak for me. We need to do something. It sounds like the four-way stop is the way to go. If there's a way for us to find a way to get that 4-point study done for less, because that's just ridiculous, but it would be nice to maybe reach out another government, somebody else that options. I don't know.
Well, if you reach out to Douglas County, the city has an intergovernmental agreement for transportation services, so they're going to charge us whatever the council has in that agreement.
Charge us whatever we have in which agreement.
The agreement that the city has with Douglas County. You saw snippets of it, for instance, when the preemptive railroad signage issue came up. For instance, they charge you for the truck, the staff, it's all sort of spelled out. So, we can reach out to Douglas County and ask them for a quote to do that intersection, just as we could reach out to Carroll County or any other jurisdiction that, potentially could do that.
Douglas County would look at the stop sign over in Carroll County?
Under our agreement, the agreement is with the city of Villa Rica. So for instance, yes, they do intergovernmental agreements, and if their commission approves it, it's very much like the services they provide at the library.
Sounds
It
like
may
a good
take
idea.
A lot longer, but yeah, it can get done.
And I do want to point out, this quote is about 1.5 years old, so it may not be still the same, but I can't imagine it'll be a whole lot more.
Being less.
I know somebody recommended some speed humps,
Oh, good.
bumps.
So what is the pleasure of the council? You want to go with city manager's suggestion to reach out to Douglas County?
To reach out to anybody we can.
Is that agreeable with?
And then basically, if we proceed with anyone, we'll need to have approval to take it out of the council's contingency budget.
Okay, do I get a vote on that motion to
Say again?
take the money?
If we're going to move forward and have a cost item, it's a non-budgeted, so we're going to need authority to charge the council's contingency budget unless you want to identify another pot of money to spend for such services.
Don't we want to see what the amount is first?
I can go out and get quotes and bring them back. Like I said, it's the will of the council, so.
That would probably be a good first step, see what the cost is, if you can get us a lower cost.
Thank
We
you.
want to give the city manager the go ahead to check on some prices.
Do some shopping.
All right.
Thank you.
We don't need a motion for that. No, we just move on. Mr. City Manager, we give you that right or that authority to do that for us, please. All right. You finished, Ms. Hyde. All right. Public Works, I think Mr. Pete is out. So, City Manager, you want to handle that for us?
1 minute, didn't we add something to the agenda at the end of community development as an item number 7 on the waiving of signage fees, or am I in the wrong place?
You're in the wrong place.
F7,
Which,
We on C, not
F.
F.
F7,
You're F.
thank you.
bottom of the line.
Got it, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our Public Works Director is out with a death in the family, so condolences with his family. What you have before you is a contract for maintenance of highway services between the City of Villa Rica and the State Department of Transportation. This is for the Carroll County side of Villa Rica for services the Public Works staff is already providing, specifically mowing and cleaning of right-of-way and snow and ice removal. The city has negotiated an agreement where the State Department of Transportation will pay it $2,000 per center line mile per year for maintenance of said highways, bridges, and approaches there too.
How many miles is that?
Works out to roughly about 18,000 some change on an annual basis, sir.
It sounds like a no-brainer to me. I move to approve.
Second.
Right, it has been properly moved and seconded that we will do the contract for maintenance on the highways. All in favor? All opposed? All right, that's 4-0. Item D is Parks, Recreation, and Leisure Services. Ms. Cole.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This first item is regarding the request from both of the Lions Club concerning the Taste of Villa Rica. This is the memorandum of understanding that was presented to the city a couple of months ago. Before you have listed, actually that's not the one that we had from last week. Let me. Based on our conversation last week, there seemed to be some discussion with respect to the different Lions Clubs on what their actual need was going to be. What I've presented before you is some of the added cost that the city would incur based upon what some of the historical practices have been. Essentially, the mill, it does not have sound and lighting automatically included in that. Earlier this year, it was, as we discussed the sound and lighting budget for the year, it was essentially going to be that each one of the individual community groups that would seek to use the mill would come and make their requests, and this is part of that. The breakdown on the sounding lighting costs for the city is as shown above, $1,825. And the staffing, I believe there's some question as regard, in their initial letter, there was no request for staffing, but just based upon just some earlier comments that were made in the public hearing, that there would maybe be some need for staffing. So what I have just included are just some general cost.
Is that cost on sound and lighting, this is a daytime event, so is that based on the fact that lighting is provided as well in that amount?
This is what has historically been paid. Sometimes we just, so as a point of clarification, we just call it sound and lighting, but.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, this is just mainly for sound.
Okay.
Vicki, I did have the opportunity, David shared it with me, to go back and look at the contract that the city has already signed. And this event was already included in that listing, as I understand it. Have you looked back at it?
I looked back at it, and certainly will defer. When we presented the item, we certainly outlined two things and made the point to say for those community groups, they would come up and make their individual requests regarding their needs. So we identified them so that you would understand what was coming forward. But again, part of that discussion was two other groups. This particular group, and I believe it was the Arts Council group, would come and make their individual requests to the City Council. I know the Arts Council group came earlier, I believe it was at the February meeting, and we have been waiting for this one to come to make the request to City Council. It was identified.
So it's already included in your budget?
We set the money out for you.
That's what I'm saying,
Yeah, for you to have the discussion, and then that they would come and make the request to you individually. That was what the discussion was, and that's what we presented to you.
Now, the city does not own any sound and lighting equipment.
No, we do not.
We have to go out and rent it with taxpayer money. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, we contract with Pop Audio for this year.
I can see us providing staff services and things like that to help these organizations out. But I don't know why we should be in the business of having to rent the equipment that they need for their event.
I'd like to see us donate the usage of the mill I think we can cut cost on some of that staff. If they've got some volunteers, that'll help, and we have a staff person that's just kind of directing and helping and making sure the equipment, it's opened up, moved out. They could probably save some money there, and not have to spend so much on staff. Maybe somebody has to hang around in case the electrical shuts off like it does. And I sent an email to one member today suggesting that if this was the true cost for sound and lighting, I have the same issue Danny does. That's not something the city has. We actually would have to go hire somebody for the private group, and we would have to do that for any private group that we did this for. I'd like to see them take care of that, but I'd do some shopping and see if you could get sound for less than $1,800 for how many hours? 5 hours? 5 hours? I hate to see us use taxpayer dollars to have to go hire a subcontractor for a private group. But the other things, I don't see why we can't help us. And there's no doubt they do a lot of good in the community. I mean, you can't even argue with that.
Didn't you, Ms. Cole, didn't Ms. Sullivan say that they had someone to do the setup and taking down? Well, I can't answer because but wasn't that what she said?
She did indicate that they
had someone to do
some
that.
of the other groups.
And since the sound and lighting is already in the budget, why are we talking about it? I mean, I know they supposed to come and ask for, present it to us, but if we voted way back when that it was gonna be paid for, why are we talking about it now?
Because they have to come individually, and we didn't know what we would decide, so you have to have the money in case you decide yes. If you decide no, that money doesn't get spent. If you decide yes, it has to be there.
Make the motion, we accept we spend $1,825 for sound and lighting, for Taste of Villa Rica.
Second motion. It's been moved and seconded that we would give the $1,825 for sound and lighting to the Lions Club. All in favor, show of hands. All opposed. Here we go.
It'll be fun.
One thing that we're going to have to look at, because I think, from having looked at it, I think you've already contracted
That's what I'm saying.
with Pop Audio for this date. So I don't think the city's going to have the ability to call up and say, we don't need your service. I think you've already bought it.
You think it's a done deal, huh?
Then there wasn't much purpose for us doing this.
Well, if I can point out, earlier in the year, there were some council members who made the point of saying that they wanted to see what the cost was and that they didn't want to just make, I guess, a blanket approval, and they wanted to make sure that any community groups coming forward, that they knew and understood what the true costs were. So that's where the initial conversation came, and that's where you were getting the requests from some of the individual community groups, just to kind of give you a little history.
He's right, we've already contracted. What's the exact number what's the dollar figure we've contracted?
That's the dollar figure that you have
$1,825.
historically paid for.
So we have somebody under contract for $1,825. I don't know how we back out on that one.
Well, if it's the pleasure of the council, if you're choosing, to attempt to get out of it, we can look and see what we can do on that. But I believe that the contract that we signed with Pop Audio listed a number of events that we were going to retain them for.
And this was one of them, huh?
This was one of them.
Miss Coleman, sound and lighting, help me, Mr. Mecklin, lighting during the daytime?
I think it's called sound and lighting, but I think David is exactly right that you get to pick and choose what you need, and I think this is all sound. I mean, I don't have the contract in front of me, but I
It
believe
is all sound, just as a point of clarification. That's what we just generally call that contract, the sound and lighting contract, but this is primarily sound for this event.
When is this event coming up?
This event is October 8th, I believe it is, yes.
So we can have Mr. Mecklin check to make sure we are under contract, and if we are, I don't see why we should even be voting on it.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
All right, so the memorandum of understanding has a very specific request from the entity. That's in the packet. That's the June 22nd letter. And it has very, very specific requests. When we went through the budget process, knowing that this has occurred in the past, we did indeed put this money in the budget, and then subsequently, the council did indeed approve a contract. I suspect, and with all respect to the council, I know that we've already spent enough time on lawyers just on the first contract because there was some moving around where someone thought they had a contract, they didn't have a contract. What I would suggest the council do is reconsider its vote on this. Go ahead and allow the sound and lighting. When we do the 2017 budget, we will back that out so that in the future, you have that contingency, and I think that's probably how it